Hi everyone, and welcome to Ed Rollo's session on Learning and Teaching VCE English Units 3 and 4 in 2024. My name's Lauren and I'm really glad to be here with you today. Thank you very much for watching. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm recording this webinar on the traditional country of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains and pay respect to elders past and present. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land. So you might be wondering, who am I and why am I speaking with you? My name's Lauren Fisher and I'm the English Content Lead at Ed Rollo. Just quickly, I'm a former senior English teacher and I have a Master of Research in English Literature. I'm also an accredited editor, which is really fun to say. You might gather from these things that I love literature and words a lot and I really love what I'm doing at the moment. I've been at Ed Rollo for 7 years. Currently, as I said before, I'm the English Content Lead. What this means is that I'm in charge of what we call the course recipe, more on that later, and managing the build. So along with my wonderful colleagues, I work with our presenters on their content in preparation for recording it. What this means is that we collaborate on the planning, and at Ed Rollo we review and edit the presenters' lessons. But I should stress that the presenters themselves are responsible for authoring their own content and their current classroom teachers. So we have a wonderful team of presenters this year, some returning, it'll be familiar to you, and some brand new faces, and I'm very excited. The build is in excellent hands. Before we move on, I just want to point out down here at the bottom of the screen is a QR code that you can scan at any time. It will take you to a form, and if you fill it in and request more information, one of our team will reach out to you. I should make sure that my face isn't covering the QR code properly, so let's see how we go. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. First, I'll give a broad summary of what Ed Rollo will be building for VCE English in 2024. Spoiler, there's quite a lot of it. Then I'll go through some of the feedback we received when we sent out a survey to schools earlier this year, asking for thoughts on our previous English courses. Then we'll have a look at the new study design and look at each area of study in turn. We'll go through the major changes to each area of study, and then I'll talk you through what Ed Rollo will be building for that particular area. Then finally, we'll take a look at the new features in Ed Rollo's English courses that we think will be great solutions to some student and teacher challenges. And that includes our approach to supporting EAL students a bit more than we have previously. So first up is our new text courses for the reading and responding to text units. We're building 6 brand new ones. Very excited about some awesome texts on the list this year. And Things Fall Apart and William Wordsworth are previous courses that we built a couple of years ago, but we will be updating them to make sure that they align with the new study design. So I'll come back to what we're doing for these courses later in the webinar, but I just wanted to flag the text to start with. So secondly, we're building a brand new course for creating text, the brand new area of study, and we'll cover all of the ideas in the framework of ideas, as well as text types in the creative process, and again, more on this later. And we're rebuilding our analysing argument course from the ground up. It's been around a long time and it served schools incredibly well over the years. It's time to make a fresh start. But don't worry, the wonderful Andrea Hayes is still at the helm, so again, in really good hands. Sorry about that. Technology. Okay, so to keep our courses consistent with each other, Ed Rollo builds all of our content to what we call a specific recipe. So this involves things like course structure, lesson length, a number of questions in a lesson, things like that. English has its own special recipe, because English is special, which dates back to 2017. And those of you who have been using our courses for a while probably remember that we have basically divided our text courses into 3 sections, themes, essay deconstructions, and essay toolbox. Anyway, it's worked reasonably well so far, and we're really proud of the work we've done. But we're also dedicated to continuous improvement at Ed Rollo. And so this year we've gathered feedback from teachers, students and presenters on what's worked well in our courses and what we could develop to serve schools better than we already have. And we've developed a brand new recipe, which is really exciting times. So, the development opportunities that we identified was that schools would really like more support for their lower and mid-range students as well as their EAL students. Schools felt that our content was pitched a bit high at times. So this could include things like more accessible sample essays, more sentence level activities, including things like vocabulary, syntax, and coverage of EAL specific tasks. As well, some more opportunities were shorter, sharper lessons. While schools loved our essay deconstructions, the videos could be a bit intimidating in their length for students. As well as that, a more direct comparison of sample responses to support students in levelling up. So previously we had 3 different levels of sample essay, but schools felt that we could do more to actually compare them directly so that students could understand more about how to move from one to the other. And of course, more data for classroom teachers. Though English is set up differently, English teachers, of course, we know still want to know about the strengths and weaknesses of students. And we're really excited to develop some more features that will give teachers that information. More on that later. Right, okay, on to the new study design. Change is indeed upon us. So the main structural changes in the study design, just pause, I'm sure you're all very familiar with this already, but given that you're still in the thick of 2023, doesn't hurt to have a quick refresher. Of course, the major structural changes is that there's no more comparative area of study, RIP, and in its place there's a brand new area of study called creating text, which is where the creative response now lives. There are now 2 single text studies, and these have to be different text types. Analysing argument and presenting argument were previously 2 areas of study. They've now been condensed into 1. And the English and the EAL outcomes correspond much more closely. So anyone teaching English and EAL in the same classroom, your lives are probably going to be a little bit easier in 2024. And we've got just a quick summary table here of the old study design versus the new study design by area of study, and how, where the changes are. So obviously creating text is new, reading and comparing text no longer exists. So as well as changes to structure, there are also some changes in the focus of the new study design. So really importantly, there's a new emphasis on student voice and agency. One of the key areas this comes out is that schools are encouraged to select texts and issues to suit their particular cohort, ideally in consultation with students. And there's also obviously more on student collaboration and feedback, and more on developing students' authentic writing voices, and we'll come back to those later. There's also more on inferential reading and viewing strategies. So more about the process of understanding a text and writing about it, and more about the process of writing and drafting. So not just the finished product, but more about reworking, getting feedback, refining, redrafting, all of that wonderful creative process. As well, what the study design has included, which excites me because I love dot points, are more explicit skill sets for assessment, and we'll get into that in a bit, but I love them. I think they're a really positive addition to the study design. So, okay, on to reading and responding to texts, which is now 2 areas of study, Unit 3, Area of Study 1, and Unit 4, Area of Study 1. So the major changes to Unit 3, Area of Study 1, the most obvious one is that there's no longer a creative component to this area of study. It's now entirely a textual analysis assessed with an analytical essay. EAL has an extra listening task, or viewing task, that connects to the text context and values. So as far as the dot points go, there's more emphasis on characters and plot, known as the dynamics of a text. And what was previously known as the world of the text is now sort of covered partly by dynamics of a text and partly by the historical context and the social and cultural values in a text. So that's more explicit. It gives us more to work with. What was previously known as features of the text is now vocabulary, text structures, and language features in a text, and how these elements, covering the text again, how these elements are used to construct meaning. And so again, more explicit, that's what I'm talking about with explicit skill sets. It's really clear where the focus should be. And there's also more emphasis more emphasis on the process of reading and understanding a text rather than just the finished analytical essay. So we've got reading and viewing strategies, explore and analyze in the dot points rather than explain and analyze. So it's subtle, but I think it's important. It really emphasizes the process of reading and viewing. Unit 4, AOS 1, of course, structurally, this is now a single text study rather than a comparative. It's essentially a repeat of the Unit 3 AOS 1, but with slightly more sophisticated outcomes. So they further sharpen their skills of reading and viewing texts, consolidate their capacity to critically analyze text, etc. So this must be a different text, of course, and a different text type from what they studied in Unit 3 AOS 1, and the assessment is an analytical essay for both English and EAL, no extra listening task this time. So the dot points are very similar to Unit 3 AOS 1, as you'd expect. Some important differences are that this one refers to explicit and implicit ideas, concerns and values, whereas before in Unit 3 AOS 1, they left off the explicit and implicit, it just said ideas. We've also got explore and analyse how the historical context and the social and cultural values in a text contribute to meaning and shape readers' understanding. That's a little bit deeper than the Unit 3 AOS 1 equivalent. And there's one dot point that doesn't appear at all in Unit 3 AOS 1. Which is explore and analyse how the values in a text are conveyed. So what is EdRoller doing? Let's jump back quickly to the text courses that we'll be building for 2024. Again, very excited here. So our new text courses are split into two sections, text knowledge and essay skills. So in the text knowledge section on this slide here, we have one lesson on context and values, followed by a lesson that supports the EAL listening task, which relates to the context and values of the text. After this, we've got 3 to 4 lessons on key themes in the text, and finally a set of review questions to test students' understanding of the content in this section. More on this later. So each of our themes lessons is structured in a particular way, with an introduction to the theme and then covering the ideas in the text, dynamics of the text, features of the text, relevant quotations, questions and activities. And all of these are done through the lens of each relevant theme. So I'm sure you'll have identified also that these link explicitly to the new dot points over here. So we believe this structure will really lower the cognitive load for students and be a real help to them in understanding how to connect the techniques with the ideas, which can always be a bit of a struggle. So categorizing them by theme and looking at each of these elements through the lens of that theme, we think will really be helpful. Just a quick couple of example slides as a sneak peek. These haven't been recorded yet, so you're looking behind the curtain at the moment. Some example slides from a theme lesson on My Brilliant Career. So this is dynamics of a text. So this is looking at how Miles Franklin uses setting to explore the theme of mateship in the novel. And then a slide looking at how Franklin uses text structure to explore the theme of mateship. So one looking at dynamics of the text, one looking at features of the text. And all text course lessons, the themes lessons, will have this, will cover both of those elements. So the second section of our text courses is essay skills. These lesson titles might look a bit familiar to those of you who have been using our courses for a little while because they sort of mimic what we did in the old essay toolbox section, but we've changed the focus quite a lot this year. So each element of an essay, planning, introduction, topic sentences, etc., is divided into 2 lessons, like a basics lesson followed by an upgrading lesson. So what this means is that each student will have an accessible entry point and we'll be exploring really explicit strategies for improving their work, which we know is something that we can all struggle with. So we'll have 2 levels of sample response that we'll compare and unpack in each lesson. So this is really a combo of the essay deconstruction and the essay toolbox in the past. So the idea is that students will be able to see really clearly the difference between these two levels, and we'll give them strategies on how to move from one to the other. So the focus is really on upgrading a response from good to great. And we will, of course, provide the full 2 essays as printables, because we know how long it takes to write your own. We hope they help you out a little bit. And this section is based mostly on the key skills dot points on the slide now. So again, just an example slide here. This is an example of a section of a lesson in We Have Always Lived in the Castle, where we go through strategies to improve the language used to transition between ideas in an essay introduction. So we got some feedback that more granular sentence level activities like this would be really helpful, so we've taken care to include them wherever we can. So in this particular one, we move from, your fairly basic transitions like firstly, but, secondly, finally, into sort of a more sophisticated way of expressing yourself. So on to creating text, a brand new area of study. I hope everyone's excited. So this is just a brief outline of the way this brand new area of study is structured. Teachers choose one key idea from a choice of 4 in the framework of ideas here: country, protest, personal journeys, and play. And then choose 3 short mentor texts from a possible 4 in each idea that explore the particular idea that they've chosen. And students use these mentor texts to inspire their own creative works with a strong emphasis on the creative process. Assessment is 2 creative texts with commentary for English and 2 creative texts with annotations for EAL. So a subtle but important difference there, and we'll make sure that we go through both. Also, just a quick note about this blue box on the right. This is another key way that student voice and agency are incorporated into the new study design. Teachers are encouraged to consider their particular students when choosing the ideas and mentor texts, and create meaningful and authentic connections with the selected idea and the experience of the students. So this is a wonderful opportunity to work with students to develop their own creative voices. So it says here important dot points. Obviously, they're all important, but these are the ones that we've focused the most on when deciding how to structure the EdRolo course. So, of course, we have the mentor texts, which are used to help students understand the mechanics of effective and cohesive writing. The key knowledge dot point goes a little bit further here and specifies vocabulary, text structures, and language features used in effective and cohesive writing. Then we have the ways purpose, context, and audience shape writing, obviously vital in this area of study. So the purpose, context, and audience is the focus rather than text types in themselves. But VCAR does specify here on the right, or does acknowledge, that many students will continue to benefit from the explicit knowledge and application of generic writing forms and structures, that is text types, to support the creation of their own text. So when it comes to support the creation of their own text, so we've kept that in mind as well, that text types are going to be important to cover for a lot of schools. When it comes to students' creative works, they create text with a stated purpose to express, reflect, explain, or to argue, and an understanding of context and audience. So again, the purpose, the context, and the audience are coming through really strongly here. There's also an emphasis on planning, drafting, and refining, and of course a commentary on why they've chosen particular techniques and structures. So in our minds, we've got 3 main areas here: the mentor texts, purpose, context, and audience, including text types, and the creative process. So if we move on here, here's our first section in the EdRolo course, the framework of ideas and the mentor texts. So our plan is to have a short lesson on each mentor text, and each of these lessons will contain a discussion of the ideas in the text, the purpose, audience, and context, and the vocabulary, text structures, and language features. So once again, we're drawing really strongly from the study design dot points. Of course, we'll cover all of the key ideas and all of the mentor texts within each key idea. Okay, So the other sections of the course are under development at the moment. We're almost there, not quite. This is our plan at the moment. One section that focuses on textual forms or text types, and one on the creative process. So in the textual forms, rather than doing things like what's a short story, what's a speech, what are the features of a feature article, we've decided to focus more on each of the 4 purposes named in the study design. So to express, to reflect, to explain, and to argue. And we'll also provide an example of each of these purposes and integrate it with a key idea from the framework. So, for example, we've got the textual forms used to argue, and then a sample response around this purpose. So this particular sample response might be in the form of a speech and drawing on the idea of protest. So this is our way of integrating purposes with text types and then also making sure to relate it to key ideas. And then our last section will be on the creative process. At the moment, we're planning to divide this loosely into 3 lessons, or at least 3 subsections, to match the 3 phases of writing that VCA unpacked in the implementation webinars: pre-writing, writing, and after writing. So we're really keen to focus on the creative process, as, of course, the study design does as well. But again, in development, this is subject to change. If you have any thoughts, please do let us know. So just a quick example of what a slide from a mentor text lesson could look like. This one is on the conquest of land and dream from the country section. So this slide introduces the context, audience, and purpose of the text, and then we'll go into more detail on the slides that follow. Then this next slide unpacks an extract from the text itself, indicating elements such as keywords, metaphors, imagery, references to country, and use of the second person pronoun. So these are the vocabulary, text structures, and language features found in this text. So we're really excited about this new course, and we hope it will be a great support to you this year. Now onto our final area of study, the new version of analysing argument. So quickly, the changes to the structure. Previously, this was 2 areas of study, now it's 1. So the written analysis and the oral presentation had been combined into 1 area of study. And there's no longer any extra area of study for EAL in here. Assessment, for both English and EAL, there's a written analytical response to 2 persuasive texts and a point of view oral presentation. It's in the form of a discussion, dialogue, or debate, or in a presentation mode that best suits the context, purpose, and audience. So it's broadened a bit. It no longer has to be, a direct speech to the class. And there's no longer a statement of intention required. That reflection can now be found in the commentary and annotation in creating texts. So changes in focus for this area of study. There's now a clearer focus on the analysis of argument and the language used to construct it for positioning the audience. There's exploring the contention and arguments is now the central form of the teaching, then moving on to the persuasive techniques to support that. So previously, I think VCA found that students would fall into the trap of listing persuasive techniques and not really get into, what they were actually for. And now the actual issue that's chosen is a key focus again, and again specifies an issue of relevance to the cohort of students. So that's bringing in the student voice and agency again. Oops. So there's some new dot points in this area of study. A lot of the older dot points have sort of been revised a little bit, but these are the most significant new ones. The use of contention and supporting arguments, including sequence and structure, supporting evidence, language, and techniques and strategies. So this again is more explicit than in the previous study design. Previously, it was sort of covered more loosely by an understanding of arguments presented in texts. Now we've got a lot more detail here. The role of visuals in supporting and augmenting argument. Again, this is new. The context in which a text appears and how the identity of the author can affect an audience's reaction to a text intended to persuade. This is brand new, and I think it reflects the more of the emphasis on reading and viewing in the previous area of study as well. So it's more about the process of understanding the text. The ways that effective persuasive techniques counter arguments through rebuttal, respectful disagreement, and etc. Again, new. Oh, goodness me. My mouse is going nuts. Sorry about this. 1 second. Okay. And the key skills, previously they were sort of focused on identify and analyze. They're now identify and analyze and apply. So it's going a step further and a step deeper. Ed Rollo's Analysing Argument course is under development with Andrea at the moment, but the key changes that we're looking to make are sort of a more general or less prescriptive method for analysing texts. Andrea's 6-step method is excellent, but perhaps less of an emphasis on that and more general information that can be applied no matter what your school's individual approach might be. More explicit unpacking of the dot points and more in-depth coverage of the different persuasive techniques and appeals. We heard that a lot of you loved her appeals toolbox section, so we'll be expanding on that. An analysis of analysis of audio or audio-visual texts as required by the new study design, and of course the coverage of the different oral presentation forms to reflect the new study design. So this is the most exciting section for me. We've got solutions to student challenges and some teacher challenges as well that we hope Ed Rollo will be able to help you with this year. So a key challenge for a lot of students is understanding how to improve their own writing, and how we are addressing this is a couple of things. We've got a skills section in our text courses that is structured really entirely around upgrading the different elements of response. And so students, as I said before, will be able to see really clearly the difference between two levels of sample response and specific techniques for how to move from one to the other. And as well, I mentioned the review questions before. We can't wait for our client teams to show you more about this because it's much easier to do live on the platform. But we've used self-assessment checklists in other subjects before, and we're really excited to bring them into English. So here, just quickly, is one it's from QCE Legal Studies. It's the closest I could find. It's the most word-based subject that's used them. So the idea is that students are given a specific question, they write their own response, and then they're provided with an exemplar response with a self-assessment checklist. So it's not based on marks, it's based on the essential elements that student really have to include somewhere in order to really nail that particular response. And on the platform, it's really cool because as you hover over, it links to those elements of an exemplar response as well. And this is unpacked further by the presenter in a video solution as well. So there's plenty of scope for further explanation. When applied, we decided, you know what, we can apply that to English as well. There's no reason why we can't. So you could have something like getting students to write an essay introduction in response to this topic. They would write their response on the platform, and then they would complete this self-assessment checklist, select yes or no for each of those things, and they'll have a sample response or an exemplar response to compare their work to. And again, they'll be able to see, oh, okay, this is where that sample response uses Shirley Jackson's name correctly and gives the correct name of the text, as a sort of basic requirement, and where it does these other things as well. So it's tricky. Obviously, English introductions, there's any number of things that you could do to create an awesome introduction. We've tried to pare it down a little bit and keep it specific and general at the same time, with elements such as, including relevant and concise context. And of course, as the presenter goes through the sample response, she'll explain what does relevant and concise mean, which will already have been covered in the video lessons as well. And students will be able to assess, oh, okay, I have included this, or no, maybe I forgot about that little bit. And so they'll be able to see what have they nailed, what are they missing. And I'll come back to this a bit later, but teachers will be able to see what they've done as well. Another big challenge, as we know, is responding thoughtfully to topics rather than throwing their text knowledge at the page indiscriminately. So again, we've got skills lessons that focus specifically on unpacking essay topics and give students plenty of practice at that. And then theme-based lessons that integrate ideas in the text, dynamics of the text, features of the text, and quotes. So this helps students focus their responses and include the most relevant evidence and connecting those ideas with those techniques. Keeping engaged with the material. It can be a long year for students whose English is not their favourite subject. So to help with this, shorter, sharper lessons to keep the students engaged, and online activities with active elements. So super excited about this new one. Some of you might remember that in the past we've had printable PDF activities. Now we have them digital as well. So on the platform, students will be able to be given this activity, and then they'll be able to drag and drop these elements of an introduction and decide, does this sample introduction contain them or does it not? So if they decide, oh yeah, it has an opening statement, they will drag opening statement here into yes, whereas text basics maybe not, they'll drag that into no. So it keeps them a bit more active, and it's a bit more dynamic than previous activities. And teachers will of course be able to see their responses as well. Here's another one, a fill in the blanks activity, where they'll drag and drop these keywords into this paragraph to reinforce their understanding of key ideas. This one was part of the country unit. A challenge for teachers, we know, is easy insight into students' strengths and weaknesses. Not always easy to collate this data when you're dealing with a lot of essays in front of you. So EdRollo's solution, we're going to give you more data. So you'll be able to view students' completed activities, like those previous ones that we saw, and you'll be able to get some more detailed data from the review questions. So when students self-assess on a checklist, this is a legal studies example. We can't show you the English one because it's not live on the platform yet. Teachers will be able to see through sort of a consolidated checklist. Okay, so across my class, everyone's doing this first thing really well, whereas identifying the Commonwealth Parliament, 6 of my 8 students have said, no, I'm not doing this. So you'll be able to not only see individual student strengths and weaknesses, but any weaknesses across the class that you can zero in on and help them develop. And one more challenge, I think it's one more, we'll see, is understanding, remembering and using key vocabulary. So this can include meta-language and key terms. And in the case of EAL students, there's often a lot of tricky vocabulary coming up as well that they might not have encountered before. So you might have, the eagle-eyed among you might have noticed on the slides I showed you before that we have vocabulary boxes now. So we have blue ones for meta-language and really key terms. It's essential for students to understand in order to really understand the text in the lesson. And now we have purple ones as well, which is vocabulary that, might not affect understanding to the same degree, but it's a little bit tricky, so we think it's worth defining to lower any cognitive load and keep students focused on what they really need to be understanding. Oh, one more challenge, of course, is more support for EAL students, as I was just saying. So there's a variety of things that we're confident will help EAL students in our new build. The vocabulary boxes, as I previously mentioned, carefully scaffolded theory and activities, so including those sentence level ones to really help students. Using accessible language in lessons, including in sample responses. Our skills lessons have a more accessible entry point now, and we're directly supporting EAL assessment tasks, the listening task in Unit 3 AOS 1 and the annotation task in Unit 3 AOS 2. We are working with a really experienced EAL teacher on these, so we're confident that they're going to be really helpful for you. So that's about it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you found this session helpful and that you're excited as we are to see what English brings us in 2024. Please follow us on the socials. Feel free to share this video and get in touch with us for any more information about English in 2024. Thanks again for joining me and have a wonderful day. Bye.